Kids, good evening. Today we're on our number 7 in my series of My Paranormal. Now, I took a break. I did 1 through 6 relatively quickly, and then I did a video about something totally different, and now I'm back to finishing my series, which I've really wanted to do for a long time. Now, we're going to start. This is 2005 in the fall. I sold my house in Fort Lauderdale, and I had been looking since like September for something up in Central Florida. And initially, I looked in Hernando County because that was recommended to me, and I couldn't find anything I liked, and I hated the energy in Hernando County. But something kept saying, "Look in Citrus, look in Citrus, look in Citrus." And after 3 um, long drives up with the pets in the car, um, I finally found a house that I liked that was in my price range, and it was better than I expected. It's a lovely little house. It's old. It's like from the 50s, like the late 50s, I think, middle 50s, something like that. And it's got an in-ground pool and a nice big yard with a fence in the back and a decent yard out front. And recently, I just bought the empty lot across the street, so I have my own park view that will never change because nobody can build on it. So I like that. It's cool. When I moved up here, when I was looking up here, and I found this particular house, this neighborhood, when we drove into it with the real estate agent, this neighborhood had a very funereal feel to it. All the houses were very drab colors, and things were mostly kept, but not quite always kept, and not quite kept, and rarely kept well. So um, it was depressing, frankly. But I loved the house. Now, as soon as we pulled up, I saw an old lady, solid, couldn't see through her. Assumed she was an owner or something of the house. Um, she was in the yard, in the front yard. And she was over at the far end where my master bedroom is. And she was working on something in her yard that didn't exist there anymore. So that struck me as strange. And then she put her head up, she smiled, she looked at me, and she started walking over. And I saw that disjointed walk I've spoken about with ghosts, where the legs move at a different speed than the body does, and it looks strange when they walk. Suddenly I knew that my new house is going to be haunted. And I knew the second I got out of the car, even though I had not been inside, I knew this would be my new house. I just had that instinct. I had that vision. I had that whatever. So walked in, looked at the house, spoke with the owners. Strangely, they had a neighbor in the back who came over and introduced himself, um, and kind of came along for the tour, which was strange. Um, and so we looked around. It was nice. It had, a little fireplace. It had a nice pool. It had doggy doors, lots of them. So you could partition off where your dogs went. You could lock them in the main house, allow them into the laundry room, allow them into the lanai and the covered pool area, allow them out in the backyard. And eventually we also fenced off an area where you could let them go all the way outside but not roam around in the yard. So we have several layers of pet control, which was important. Now, all that aside, the house is haunted. It's haunted like hell. And the lady, it was 2 or 3 owners ago, at least 3 owners ago. I still haven't figured that out. But I know because the neighbor verified it like 6 or 7 years after I moved in. The gatekeeper had a chit chat with the neighbors because I don't do neighbors. Um, and the neighbor said, "Oh, the neighbor, the gatekeeper mentioned to this woman that I see this woman. I described the woman that I had described. And the neighbor said, "Oh, I remember her. She lived and died in that house. And she is always around, and she loves my room because it used to be her room. And she used to have shutters. So she still opens and closes these shutters that don't exist, and they make a particular sound because they were wood shutters. And she was nosy. So she loved to peek out her windows and her shutters and check on what was going on around the neighborhood. And since my master bedroom's in the corner of the house, I have a nice view of most of the area through one window or another. So I can see what's going on if I want to, but I'm not a curious person, so I don't do that. She also moves this one picture of mine when she gets into the area. She just makes it click, and it just clicks, and I can feel her right before it clicks, and it's been doing it since I put it up there. It does it year round. It doesn't do it every day, but it does it constantly. And occasionally she'll play with the strings on my blinds. She'll just rattle them, just so I know. Um, it's odd. So when I moved in, when I got up here to Central Florida, I knew that something was changing inside of me. I could feel this big change, and we there's a thing called rails to trails, where old railroad tracks, and these were usually used for phosphorus, I think, in the old days here in Florida. They'd mine phosphorus and then ship it out by rail, and the trains were so heavy and underpowered that they had to keep things as flat as possible because they could barely make it. I mean, they really struggled. These are now bike trails or walking trails, or take your pet trails or whatever, and they're hundreds of miles long, and they extend from like Tampa all the way up to close to the Georgia border, I believe. So, and it just happens to run right through my neighborhood and my little town. So when I heard about it, I thought, well, that's neat. Let's take the dogs walking. So we took the dogs walking. And suddenly I was seeing people or things near the same time every day on rails to trails that weren't there. They were residual haunts. Now, I wasn't really that in tune with residual haunts at the time that I started seeing them up here. But as soon as I started seeing them, it expanded like this balloon. It was a So at first, my first residual haunt that I started seeing often was on this one section of the rails to trails. It was a gentleman. He was dressed kind of, I wouldn't say like a safari, but kind of like a safari. So it was like an older era, but not super old era um, time frame. And my town is old. It's over 100 years old. So it's it's been around. We have a hotel that's over 100 years old. It's been around for. That's haunted too. I used to work there. We'll get to it later. So this guy would walk from this drainage pond. We have like these retention ponds in Florida. When the rain piles up too much, we put them in these big sandy retention ponds, and then Florida naturally soaks up lots of water very quickly. So the retention ponds rarely get even close to full. And if it doesn't rain every day, they just start to drop and drop and drop and drop. So he walked over this big wall, down the wall of this retention pond, and he walked right into the middle of the rails to trails. It was kind of near a bridge. And he looked, and he made this huffing, strange huffing sound. And then he kind of like growled. I don't know what that was about. And then he turned and he walked up. finished walking across the trail and up this little embankment, and then he hit this tree, and he walked back and forth just a little bit, and then suddenly he fell backwards into the ground. And what I didn't realize was where he was doing that was some little cemetery. So he literally was going back to his resting place. But something in his life happened on that trail, and he does that same strange action every time he crosses that trail. And I saw it probably 6 times in a row just to verify it. I don't hang out there anymore. My dogs are way too old to walk like that. So I don't do that anymore. But at the time, that was something that I kept seeing. And I thought, wow, this is odd. Now, when I first moved up here, I had to restart my whole practice as a massage therapist with a whole new clientele. And where I live is kind of rural, and there ain't no money fingering rednecks where I live. So you have to basically get in your car and drive to one of the metropolitan areas, Tampa, Orlando, Gainesville, somewhere else, to get clients. So I ended up expanding my neighborhood all the way from Tallahassee to Fort Myers and Vero Beach and everything in between to the Georgia border. So I did a lot of driving. What I noticed was, besides there was a lot of animals around because it's kind of a natural wild place, and there's still like deers and all kinds of stuff that run amok here. They get hit by cars often. There's lots of roadkill up here. As I kept opening up, I started seeing animals that had died before by being hit by a car. And I would see them the moment that they turned to face the car when they realized that they were going to die that second before. And being an animal lover, it was positively horrifying to me to have to keep witnessing this. And since the animals looked real, I would be driving home, let's say 2:30 in the morning after a service, or 3 in the morning, tired, and then suddenly I'm slamming on brakes on these country highways for nothing because they weren't there. And it was getting kind of dangerous. So I decided that I needed to kind of shut down a little bit. And at the same time, I was contemplating, since I was doing more driving than I was doing massaging, although that is profitable because I charge for my time and I charge for the travel and everything else. So it's very profitable to drive a long distance and do a massage. You get a lot more per minute for the massage than you do if they come to you in your own massage studio, so to speak. I decided that I was going to become a truck driver for a while and just kind of ease off what I was basically called to do. So I went on my 40th birthday and decided that I was going to get my truck driver's license. So I signed up for school and went down and commuted back and forth to Orlando for truck driving school until I got my truck driver's license. And then I started driving for the state in Canada. But truck driving is not a real lucrative job. It's all right, it pays the bills, but it's not lucrative. And the more you're out on the road, the more you make to a point, and then it kind of is diminishing returns. And I was driving a team with somebody I had met at school. So we'd stay out 5 weeks, and then we'd stay home a week, and then we'd go out 5 more weeks. Well, whenever we had overnight, which is rare for teams, because that's the whole thing with teams, you keep the truck constantly moving. But occasionally we'd run out of hours or something would happen. We'd have to overnight, let's say in a truck stop or whatever. I would make money doing massages and truck stops because it was something to do. And it was profitable, not very profitable. Truck drivers are cheap, but it was something. And as soon as I jumped out of the truck when I got home, because I used to park it in my driveway, and my team partner would leave his car in my house and then drive across the state where he lived, because I had the real estate for it. He lived more like in a suburban kind of situation. I I would jump out of the truck, out of my truck driving crappy garb, and into my scrubs and head off into massages the whole week. And I would organize them with my clients during the week, during the 5 weeks I was gone, so that I was booked solid from the minute I got home to the minute I left. So here I was with pets and a house that I'm paying for, and I spent zero time in it. So after a while, that got a little old. Then I got a job driving locally. Now, before I could do that, driving a big truck, an 18-wheeler, you can't keep slamming on your brakes for ghost animals because you'll kill a lot of people that way and do a lot of destruction to the equipment. So I went over to a town I heard about called Casadega, which is a spiritualist camp in Florida. It's in Central Florida on the East Coast. It's rather well known. And I met someone who gave me a reading. I went with the intention of please shut me down or help teach me how to close myself down. And not only did she do that, but she gave me a reading and said at some point, she goes, in the future, she goes, I see you being much better at what I'm doing than I am by far. And I said, well, that's impossible. I'm trying to shut down so I can be a truck driver. And all this kind of, she said, I don't know what to tell you, but I see that. And it ended up coming true, but there's a lot of stuff in between. Now, when you're driving a truck, you have to pay attention to the road, but you get to go to the highways and byways, and mostly the byways across this entire country, seeing things that you would never see, ever. It's not just big towns, it's small towns, rural highways, all this kind of stuff. So you get to know the country very intimately. And in that process, you pass a lot of locations with a lot of activities, cemeteries, old haunted houses, blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't have to be a, quote, haunted house. There is paranormal activity everywhere. Everywhere. Wherever there's been a car accident or a death or something, trauma, anything can leave a residual energy. Happiness can leave a residual energy, like true, just over-the-top joy. In my 48 state in Canada runs, I got to know the country really well. And I got to see all kinds of paranormal things, with the exception of all these animals, because I had shut that part down. But I couldn't shut everything down because that's just not my nature. So I was still seeing quite a bit. And it kept long days and even long, boring nights of driving a little bit more entertaining, frankly. So I enjoyed it because I've always enjoyed this ability I have. A lot of people get really freaked out by it and try to shut it off and just totally ignore it. And it's like free built-in it's like free built-in cable. I mean, it doesn't cost anything and it's already there, so you might as well enjoy it because you're not getting rid of it. If you think you are, you're just joking. You're just literally joking yourself. So I resigned myself a long time before that this would just be part of my existence. When I got tired of driving 5 weeks at a time and then working the whole week I was back, I left 48 state in Canada and I got a local job driving a truck, which was 6 days a week. Money was good. I was home every night. Got to enjoy my house. Got to enjoy my pets. I had one full day off, every Sunday. But I worked Monday through Saturday, long hours, 10, 12, 14, 16 hours. And it was very physical work. It wasn't just driving. It was physical work where I literally have to lift. In 14 hours, I'd literally have to pick up with my hands 30 tons of crap. Not little crap, but I mean, in this case, yard waste. I enjoyed the job. I loved it. And it was great because on Sunday, I could totally relax, or I could have a client, or whatever I wanted to do. So I was really ignoring my calling a lot and enjoying it. And one day, out of the blue, on a Wednesday, early morning, kind of foggy, not, just typical day, I had a client. We just got to the route, just started, picking up, and this this customer that we had, who we always kind of secretly despised because he always overloaded his trash cans by twice the legal limit of the weight, so they were just like herniatingly heavy, and I'm a huge guy, and I have a big body, and I'm very strong, and I would have to use my entire body force and swing at the same time to get the can just up into the truck. So, and it was always like wet grass and just lots of it. So he had 2, 3 cans every week. Suddenly, out of the blue, I've never seen the guy, didn't know what he looked like, had no information about him. Suddenly, he pulls out. We stop and we start doing his house, and has this he has this full-size tractor. I'm not kidding, full-size tractor, like you would have fixing a road or something. I mean, big tractor, not one of those little dinky tractors. Big full-size tractor. And he had a tarp on this thing that I guess you used to pick logs up with or something, because it had these forks that were really spiky, and it had these claws that came down on top of it. And he pulls out of his neighbor's driveway, and then he starts to rush the truck, and I'm like, whoa, 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 that's not going to happen. And lots of things happen, but finally he ends up, long story short, running his tractor fork through my entire right hand. I mean, literally pierced it from the front. It came out the back. There was sunlight and my glove in between, which I had to pull out of the hole, and I could still see the sunlight until it swollen shut. And it should have theoretically completely destroyed my right hand, according to doctors, but for some miraculous reason it did not. But it did do a lot of damage that took a lot of time to repair. And not only was I unable to drive, but I was unable to do massages or anything else. So then I just sat at home like a vegetable, going to physical therapy 3 or 4 times a week. And it was traumatizing because I had my, quote, holy Jesus moment. I totally, and it was right kind of before Easter. So then I totally, like, Easter meant something totally different to me after I knew what it was like to be nailed literally to the cross. I was literally nailed to my truck. It's a pain that you just can't describe, and you never want to experience it. It will literally make you see God in about that fast. So that became a huge, profound effect on my life. And we'll get to that story, what happened post my Jesus moment, in the next video. So I thank you for watching. I'm going to try to keep them shorter and more compact. So hope you learned something. There's more of this great story to come, and more things that I've experienced and learned. So don't give up on me. And at the end, I'm going to wrap it all up in a big bow and hand it to you like a present. So I appreciate your time and your interest, and have a good one.